what words of advice that you could give to someone who is just starting in January?
Don't keep it a secret. Don't think you can do it on your own. Build a network, get your family doctor involved, get a counselor who understands addiction, go to the meetings. You did it your way and you blew it for so long. There are people who have gone through this, who know the way out of it. Go listen to them. Don't just go to a meeting. Get your sponsor, get your home group, take your commitments, do all the things you need to do. If you're going to do this, make it a full-time job.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Willpower Podcast. It is a brand new year. I'm so happy that you're here today. Today, I have an amazing guest. His name is Faust Ruggiero. He has almost 40 years in the clinical research and therapy and counseling, and he has done a multitude of different things. I'm so excited to introduce my next guest today. Hi, Faust. How are you today?
Well, I'm great. Thanks for asking. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah. Likewise. So, Faust, can you actually just give us a little brief background on who you are and just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I've been a clinical psychologist, I'd say, for 4 decades. I've always been interested in human interactions and how people work together. I started doing addiction work. We're back in the 80s when I started to work with people with substance abuse problems, clinics, hospitals, counseled 5 years in a prison doing drug and alcohol counseling, and then in my private practice. So it's been a long run, but I'm still doing it. So it must be good.
Yeah, you must enjoy it because you've been doing it for pretty much your whole life, right? So you said you've been doing it for 40 years. What have you noticed, especially in addiction, that has maybe evolved or changed over time since you first began?
When I started doing this back in the 80s, there were people counseling, but primarily the work was being done by 12-step people, county agencies, things like that. And what I found was most of it at the time, the services were being offered by recovering people. I was one of the first. I'm not recovering. I saw the job. I didn't really know what I was applying for. I applied, and the person that interviewed me said, we're looking for someone with your credentials, but who's not recovering, because we'd like to introduce a new concept into our program. So I took the job and got hooked real quick on helping people with substance abuse issues. Worked there for a while and then went into the prison to work. What I've seen though is it's opening up quite a bit, all different kinds of people in it. The research has changed. It's a little bit more targeted now than it was before. And I'm seeing the stigma, if you will, is gone. That's being reduced. It used to be the dirty people that were coming for counseling, and you assumed they were in the streets, or they were flipping wine bottles out the window or something.
Yeah.
And people are now just accepting it as a problem. Okay, it's a problem of living, and we want to go get that. So it's changed quite a bit. I think we still have a long way to go, but
yeah. You said it was specialized. It's more specialized now, which I would agree with. Back then in like the 80s, was it just more generalized as far as like, oh, I have a drinking problem and he must have this problem and this problem too? Or is it just, what do you mean by that?
Well, at the time, either you came in for a substance abuse problem and that's what you were treated for, or you came in for some other problem. And if you said you had a substance abuse problem at that time, people were trying to determine why you were drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're smart enough to realize that, but we treat the addiction first. We're not looking at why they're drinking first. We want to stop the drinking. Now we can go into all the whys and all these kinds of things. I think we're doing it a little bit better now. I think we're focusing more on the physical addiction and getting that out of the way first, and being able to help a person through the emotional and mental aspects of it.
Yeah. When you talk about the physical addiction component, what is the hardest part of getting someone to wean off or just completely become abstinent from substances?
I don't think we've been very good at helping people understand the physical part of the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
What they know is I drink a lot or I use a drug a lot, and my tolerance went up. I used more. Now I'm addicted. And if I don't use, I'll get sick. But we haven't taught them enough about hormonal changes and neurotransmitters and how they affect the brain, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
For my people, when I do that with them and I say, okay, let's back it down. Let me show you why you got addicted. let me show you what's happening in your body.
Mm-hmm.
How if we treat your body differently and we get you healthy physically, that's our first step. Now we can go into all the other things. So people are far more accepting of that. They understand that, and they'll tell me, why didn't anyone ever tell me these things? Yeah, I knew, I knew the progression. Okay, I drank a lot. I started with a beer, then it went to 2 and 3, and then I started with wine and the hard stuff, and then it was all different times of the day and what have you. I said I got all that, but I never understood, why. One person put it so simply. He said, "Why does orange juice not get me drunk, and alcohol does?" And I said, first of all, I thought that's a kind of fundamental question. But let me think about it. I said, you know what? That's a great question. What about the substance? Well, it has addictive properties. I said, well, that's really not helping anybody out. Let's go through the whole physical thing. Let's talk about what it does, how it changes the way your neurotransmitters work, how those things create euphoria and your brain adjusts to it. And when they start understanding this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just this unknown going in the body and all they're thinking about is the effect. Now they start to get a little bit more about the pathway. And what we're doing is creating addicted people who are more intelligent, and we're giving them some more things to hold on to as we're trying to get them through their addiction.
Yeah. When you say more things to hold on to, what do you mean by that?
Well, again, medicine it took the lead in treating these things, and then counselors got involved. But I don't think enough people understood what all these reference points are. Let's like once we start working with the mental part of things, we can say, okay, mom did this to me, or mom was an addict, or the bullying there, or we can go back and get all those things and reference things, and people understand why they got there. When it comes to addiction, I want them to have reference points. I want them to have medical things. I want them to understand some of the research and the medical things that they can hold on to. I want to make them more intelligent people, and they respond better. So the more I give them to hold on to, the more places they can go and say, okay, I know what that means. I know what he's talking about there. I know why that happened. I know probably based on that, I know what I'm going to do next, and I can see the progression of it.
Yeah.
Being an alcoholic, that people think, oh, you rode past the liquor store and all of a sudden you just jumped. That's not the way it works. It's been set up for weeks before that time,
Oh, yeah.
And I want them to learn, but I want them to learn how the body's doing that, because the interaction between the brain and the body never stops. So the body just doesn't do it, or the brain doesn't do it. The body and the brain are working together to either help you through this or to tear you down in it, depending on, where
So Faust, I kind of wanted to bring it around to a personal scenario. So when I was at my worst drinking, and I was drinking almost about a handle, so like a 1.75 milliliters, almost every other 2 days, which is quite the amount. And what I noticed towards that last year, when I was really, really in the thick of it, I noticed that my brain chemistry, like the way I was functioning throughout the world, completely changed. I no longer had my personality. I felt like I was on like a robot, just continuing to drink without even having the option to stop. That's how amplified my addiction got. And I was wondering, from a clinical point of view, like, do you think that the amount that we're drinking, or the amount, or the daily use of it actually can actually alter the brain's chemistry and how we just normally live our lives?
Yeah. Some of the, some of the research is saying that, the brain is a physical structure. So if we continually do things to it that break it down, the structure changes. Physically, it changes. What I see is that when people get deeper into addictions, they tend to get more primal, if you will. They tend to be more of I'm driven and I must go kind of, and personality then takes a back seat. And then it begins to change. And a lot of it now is not so much, well, this is the person I want to be. This is the person I am. And I'm willing to sacrifice that because I have to go in this direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say it that way. Because in the worst of it, I felt like I had no control over it anymore. Whereas, all the many years leading up to that last year of my life before the liver transplant I basically could have control, but then towards the very end, I almost had no control because of the physical symptoms. Not even so much the mental at this point. It was actually so physical, and the addiction was so physical, which I didn't even know that. Yes, I craved alcohol all the time, but it was so strong that I couldn't function without it in the morning. I literally could not function without having a drink right away because I would throw up. I wouldn't be able to think, walk, anything. It got to that.
Well, it's interesting. People will talk about that physical part when they get to that level that you were just at.
Yes.
I will say to them, okay, we just had New Year's Eve, and it's on New Year's Eve. And I say, if you really look at it, all those things that are personified when you get to that point where you were are happening at a lower level with one good night of drinking. You get up, your personality gets sacrificed. Your body is it's in for whatever you're going to do with it. I mean, that's when you say, yeah, I'm going to be sick in the morning, but if I have one more of these drinks, and then you go have one, you're now cashing in all those intelligent decision-making processes and all the feelings that should be altruistic and involved with other people. They're gone. And that's on a very small, insignificant level, a night out. If you do that for years at a time, the subtle changes are never realized until you get to the point that you decide and you realize, I can't stop this. And you know what goes into it. Then the physical need is absolute. The defenses come in, the denial and all those kind of things that come in. And before you know it, you're on autopilot. That's the term I've always used. You're on autopilot and you're not thinking about it anymore. And it's just you get up every day, put the routine in, don't think about it, and go do what you're going to do. Boy, that's a collision course for disaster.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. So Faust, I kind of want to get back to when we were talking earlier about kind of your career, and you came up with this model. Can you explain that? Like the process way of life model. Like I read about it briefly, but I kind of want to hear from in your own words.
You go to school, they teach you all the fundamentals, all the therapeutic approaches, and then you get out in the field and you're in various settings and you get into private practice. And of course you start weeding out some things. This works, that doesn't work too well. But what I noticed was that if people paid attention to various processes and learned how to use them, their lives got much better. Processes like honesty, gratitude, fact-finding, getting your intellect over your emotions, and things like that. When they learn how to work with that, I put 52 of these processes together, and they're just things I use in counseling. It's not that I decided to design a model. It's just things that I were successful with my clients, and I put together a program of these processes, and that was the first book, the Fix Yourself Handbook, which is all about using there are 36 chapters, all 36 different processes, addressing 36 different problems. And, it's been like the flagship book, and every book I've written has had that basic philosophy applied to different things. Addiction is one of those things. And if you look at it and you say, okay, processes, what are the 12 steps? They're processes. It's exactly what they are. Whether it's surrender or higher power, doing your inventory. You can't do an inventory without processes. People just don't. They were just never called that. You have to access all these processes. And when you do, and you start to really work with them, life changes.
Yeah. In the processes, I mean, it's so different for each individual case, I feel like, right? And that must be difficult on your end as for your job when you're meeting that person and you're going into their past and you're kind of figuring out what makes them tick. What do you find is like the hardest part of like the probing process in that angle? Like
if you're willing to say, you know what, new person coming in, whole new landscape here. As a therapist, you surrender to that and say, let's go find you. It really becomes a motivator for you. The antithesis of that is what we always do with people. We walk in with we give stereotypes. Well, if you're an addict, this applies. And that may be the case in some, but I don't go there. Those are all my reference points. I have them all. I can access them if I need them. But if you come in, you're a person specific to you. I'm going to find out all about you and see where you're coming from, what you're experiencing, what motivates you, what gets in the way, all those. I'm going to get all that stuff. And and then we're going to go in and start the process.
Yeah. Something that just came to mind was, where do you fall in the camp of having like a predisposition from like a biological standpoint, or just having maybe the personality, and that's why you kind of fell into substance abuse issues? Like, I think of my own family, and I always felt that I did have a predisposition because my father was a heavy drinker, his father, and so on and so forth. But the more literature I read and the more things I come up and notice in articles and things like that, that sometimes a lot of people say that that isn't true. So I was wondering where you stood in that.
I never discount the physical. So when you talk predisposition, you're really going with the physical. Psychological things, environmental things. I grew up in a house where there was a lot of alcohol. It became the norm for us, and I'd probably drink too much. But in my mind, to work it to an addiction, that means your neurotransmitters, your internal part of your brain, has to be susceptible to it. So I still lean in that direction. There is a movement in the past 8 to 10 years where people are trying to get away from the disease concept.
Yeah.
We just have to know where that was motivated from. And that's the insurance companies and the AMA and all those. It's always money that drives those kinds of things,
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened is, in the advent of online services, many more people are accessing the services. So insurance companies are getting swamped. So they're trying to weed out a few things.
Really?
And the disease concept was proven, but never 100%. So it was fair game to attack. But I just think that, I'm not going to get myself hung up in all that stuff. You come to my office, you say, hey, Dad was a heavy drinker. There's alcoholism in the family. I drank to the point that I lost my liver. We don't need a whole lot more family background here.
Right. Yeah.
So it's there. And the other thing we have to, I think, be consistent. If I'm a doctor and you come in my office or in the hospital, what do we teach our trainees to do? Get an in-depth history.
Mm-hmm.
Physical, psychosocial history. We want all of it. And now what we're going to do with substance abuse is say, let's phase that one component out. I don't think so.
Yeah.
If it's there, it's just a question about doing the research and seeing what applies. We can have problem drinkers. We can have alcoholics. If you're an alcoholic, if you're a drug addict, then I tend to go more toward that model.
Yeah.
Lesser so with opiates, for example, you may have no addiction whatsoever in the family, but they're so highly addictive and it happens so fast that, then we may push that to the side a little bit, or at least, do a little bit more checking. Alcohol always has a physical component, and that always ties back to genetics.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one too. I tend to believe that from my very first drink, I enjoyed it so much that I was chasing that feeling since from the age of 14, right? Which is very strange. And when you consider like all the other ways of I don't know, enjoying yourself, and then all of a sudden being so in love with something at such a young age was, just remarkable on so many different levels. I kind of wanted to talk about, what do you think why is our culture obsessed with alcohol? Why do you think that it's like, it's the first thing that's offered to you when you go into a house? If you don't have that, it's almost rude. And then when you say you don't drink, you're the one that kind of looked at oddly, oddly enough. I always wondered, like, what, from your point of view, what do you think that is? Like, why is it so prevalent in our?
Well, there are a number of
world?
things there. First of all, obviously it's legal and it's sold everywhere. It is a device that we use for celebratory events. We use it when we don't feel so great. I'm tired at the end of the day. Man, what a day I put in. Let me have a drink or two. So it's always just been there. Interesting thing you can do to kind of really see how that develops is, now we have marijuana legalized.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at marijuana, it's following the exact same footprint that alcohol follows. We sold it. We want this to be legal. We sold it by saying medicinal. You go back into the days of the Old West, the snake oil guy,
snake oil salesman,
said, hey, this is the elixir that cures everything. And they sold it as such. And it was all alcohol based. We're doing the same thing with pot. Why is it there? Because we like to have those additives, those things in our lives that make us feel better I'll say to people, you stop drinking. Yeah, it took me a while, but I did. Do you have any alcohol in the house? I love the answer. Yeah, in case people stop by. I
Yeah.
said, people stop by my house all the time. I don't ever offer them a drink. Why not? I never even enters my mind. I don't
Yeah.
do it. It's not there. We have a great time. We laugh, they still come back. So I guess it's okay, and we remember what we did. And I don't worry about anybody driving home, because it only takes 2 drinks to get a DUI.
Mm-hmm.
We put it in there because we like to get high.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
People look for all these other reasons. We like euphoria.
Yeah.
And so, so we have alcohol, and it's in 100,000 different ways you can buy alcohol. This drink, that mixed up with this. And what are we seeing with pot? Well, these gummies, and it treats this and treats that. And there's one for this and there's one for that. There's flavors over here. You can get one with energy. We like to get high.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
You always break it down to the simplest terms. We like to get high. If we didn't like to get high, we wouldn't drink.
Exactly. Yeah. And obviously there's with marijuana, I live in the state of Massachusetts, so it's not federally illegal, but it's state legal.
Same here.
Recreationally. And it's just interesting. And I'm sure they're making a killing with the taxes that they sell on, it's like 30% or something like that on
Right.
every amount that you get. So it is a lot that the state is earning off the back of marijuana. I've noticed that when I was researching you, Faust, that you do a lot of work with anxiety, and as someone with almost crippling anxiety, I was using alcohol as a way of kind of alleviating that anxiety that I had without seeking medical support, whether that be some kind of medication that would alleviate the anxiety. My point is, with anxiety, what do you find to be the easiest, or maybe some helpful tips that you could give to people out there struggling with it without having to kind of go back to either drugs or alcohol?
I'm going to go right back. And it's interesting. If in my second book, the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook, I go to this and I say the first thing you do is get healthy.
Yes.
Okay? We're back to the body. Get your body healthy. And that means that's almost always a purging exercise first when it comes to anxiety. I have a woman that came in last week and said, I'm really dealing with a lot of anxiety. I said, okay, let's look at that. And she gave me some conditions in her life that certainly would add into that. And I said, well, how are you sleeping? Not so well. I get about probably 5 hours, and then I'm tossing and turning. You drink coffee? Yes. How much? Oh, not 2 or 3 cups, maybe 4. I don't drink it after like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Okay. Any soda, any energy drinks? Only if I get tired. I said, how do you get tired on 4 or 5 cups of coffee?
Mm-hmm.
I said, now we're into the tolerance that you built up, and you're saying coffee doesn't do a darn thing to you. But if I drink one, and that's just me, if I drink 1 cup in the morning, forget it. Midnight, I'm still going. So I said, humor me. Let's just take this down. Let's get it to the point of 1 cup a day. Let's get your body healthy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your diet. Let's do that. Let's talk about sleep. And let's talk about anything else you're putting in your body, those pills or anything you may. If the one person came in and said, no, I don't do any caffeine. I get a lot of headaches. I've had migraines. I said, what do you take? Excedrin for migraine. I said, good. Check the bottle. I think there's about 60 grams of caffeine in every one of those pills. She looks at it.
Excedrin?
Yes.
Oh.
Comes back and says, oh my goodness, you're right. And how often do you take those? Like 3 times a day. 2? You just had 3-4 cups of coffee. You don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So we look at all those things. Then we're going to go to, let's see what's in your schedule. Are you overdoing it?
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, we just have sensitive nervous systems that they just react to everything. But, we're going to put things in to slow the body down. Yoga, meditation, those kinds of things. You can get into things like hemp oil, those kind of things that actually calm you down a bit. Natural herbal supplements that don't give you a high.
Mm-hmm.
So I start working. We work a very holistic approach, and all my anxiety people get better. I don't have anyone. I have one woman came in 2 years ago, was crippled. I mean, wouldn't leave the house. You see her now; she's as confident as can be.
Really?
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But what happens is, well, we tend to be a quick fix society. I want this to go now.
Yeah.
So Doc says, sure, I got something for you. Take this. Okay, now you get addicted to that, but you never work through why you got the anxiety to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't give your body and your mind a chance to work together and begin to reduce its effects. People that are willing to do that with me, I can't tell you, I don't even remember a person that came in with anxiety and we didn't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It's time. There's a commitment. I said, if you want this done in 3 weeks, go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to get this done and we give you a different way to live life, well, you trained your brain to do this one way. We have to retrain it. That's what we're doing. Then
Yeah.
Retrain your brain to think and feel differently and to learn how to not react right away, not how to stop thinking those internal thoughts. Oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And when we change that around.
Yeah. I felt when I was in the heaviest throes of my addiction, I noticed that I would drink to alleviate the anxiety, but then as I would drink and I would feel better and I would be at peace with myself and be able to fall asleep, then I would notice like the next day, next morning, and the next morning after that, next morning after that, like it would compound. The anxiety would almost, compound on top of.
It does, because it breaks the body down, and of course now your body's going to be weaker and it's going to be more susceptible to anxiety. But the other part is the addictive cycle. You know how this works. I drink and I really like drinking, and then I get anxious, so I drink, and now that's really great. So I'll focus on my anxiety because now I got a legitimate reason to drink. You know how that works, and we'll create all the reasons. So I mean, I always tell people, if you're going to do something, if you can't stop at a drink or two, you probably shouldn't be doing it. I mean, that's the bottom line. And if you've got to have 2 or 3 drinks every night, every day, it's a setup. And the research on alcohol tells us that even with 2 or 3 drinks a day, the damage is there on a cellular level. That's the concern. When you damage your cells, then you're really compromising your health.
Oh yeah. That's what I've been really big into lately. Now that I have the clear mind, ever since I've woken up from the transplant and I swore off, alcohol completely the rest of my life. Of course, I noticed that I started paying attention to the kind of the neuro science behind it and the biological components that alcohol belong to when it comes to affecting who you are. And I noticed that when you talked about it killing the cells, I guess that's what it was doing to me, right? So we have, I think it's like acetaldehyde that gets broken down. And the next thing you know, it's attacking your liver enzymes, and then the cells start to go away because of that acetaldehyde, which I'm pretty sure is just straight poison. If I'm correct. And then that's why the liver shuts down. I was wondering, what are some misconceptions about alcoholism that you've come across in your 40 years experience?
Well, there are a lot of them. With alcohol, the first thing is that, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. That's not true. Once an active alcoholic, you don't have to remain an alcoholic. I think that people will say that you can't stop, you can't change the way you think, and you certainly can change the way you think. And we have to be a little bit more open in the way we think about alcohol. We have some old ways of thinking about it. We have to stop using alcohol as a medicine, because it's not. It behaves like it for one drink, but it is not. It is not medicine. It should not be used for anxiety. Definitely not for depression. And people do that, but it's a central nervous system depressant. So why do that? Another myth is that it doesn't faze me. I used to be able to drink 2 or 3. Now I can drink 12, and I still have my wits about me. And I just, like I said, you do understand that alcohol has broken you down enough that you're just not feeling the effects anymore, right? You do understand that. No, I can drink you under the table. I said, that's not, don't brag about that.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea. So, that whole thing about, or I just drink beer. You just drink alcohol. If you drink, the handle like you were, okay, that's getting in there faster, so it's doing more damage. But if you drink 12 ounces of that alcohol in one night and you drink 12 beers, you did exactly the same alcohol, the
Right.
same amount of alcohol. The same thing's going to happen to you. You know,
Yeah.
And we have to be a little bit more open in the way we think about alcohol. We have some old ways of thinking about it. We have to stop using alcohol as a medicine, because it's not. It behaves like it for one drink, but it is not. It is not medicine. It should not be used for anxiety. Definitely not for depression. And people do that, but it's a central nervous system depressant. So why do that? Another myth is that it doesn't faze me. I used to be able to drink 2 or 3. Now I can drink 12, and I still have my wits about me. And I just, like I said, you do understand that alcohol has broken you down enough that you're just not feeling the effects anymore, right? You do understand that. No, I can drink you under the table. I said, that's not, don't brag about that.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea. And so, that whole thing about, or I just drink beer. You just drink alcohol. If you drink, the handle like you were, okay, that's getting in there faster, so it's doing more damage. But if you drink 12 ounces of that alcohol in one night and you drink 12 beers, you did exactly the same alcohol, the same amount of alcohol. The same thing's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
So it's just about educating them, getting the myths out of there, and working with facts.
Yeah. Have you noticed in your experience in your whole career that alcohol is on the downtrend lately, or do you think it's still always going to be prevalent?
Well, it's still quite problematic, but right now it's on the downtrend because we've legalized pot, and people put in their heads that, well, I don't drink as much, but I use the pot. And I say, oh, okay, so you have a medical card, right? Yes, I do. And the medical card gives you the access to do this once, twice, 3, whatever time. I said, does that supply run out? Of course it does. And how do you supplement? Well, we know where we go to get that. What I'm saying is alcohol goes down, pot goes up. We use pot more often now, so we can get ourselves to the next myth, which is that, well, you can't get addicted to marijuana, which is absolutely ludicrous. It's a drug. Of course you can. I'm treating people that are addicted to it. And the damage from marijuana over the long haul, 20-year, 30-year users, what we're seeing tremendous neurological damage in those people. So the long-term effects of pot isn't going to be good. But what's going to happen next is the honeymoon from pot will wear off. And you know what we do when it wears off a little bit? We mix it. So now we smoke a little here and drink a little here, and then when we get to be really good, we say, well, it's this particular strain of pot with this kind of alcohol, and we'll start building that, like they did things like Zager bombs and all that cool stuff that people will do. We'll start mixing and matching. That's already beginning.
Yeah.
Kids are talking, the younger people are talking about it already. We have a tendency to measure use across the board, and it's going to be down. Alcohol use will be down with older people who have decided that they'll use marijuana products without the THC, the hemp products. And that's working for them, and they don't have pot in their system.
Yeah.
They're part of that whole design, that whole statistics, but that doesn't give us an accurate picture.
Yeah.
We really have to monitor the younger generation and what they're doing as they go forward.
No, that's true. That's true. You've had like a very interesting career in the sense that you've worked with, I believe I read, deaf children. You've worked with prison inmates. You're very eclectic in the sense that your spectrum is very broad. Why did you start to focus on so many different areas where a lot of people just focus on one?
That goes back to those reference points we talked about earlier. And I did this, since I was an undergrad, applying to graduate schools. And when I was applying and interviewing, and I said, what I want to do is build my own curriculum, and I wanted to have a lot of different things I can study. I don't want to just study clinical. That's great. That's abnormal psychology. Essentially, I also want to study developmental, which is normal psychology. I mean, let's show me all the ropes for normal development. I want research. I want those kind of things. When I left grad school, I said, well, I want to do the same thing, but instead of just jumping into private practice and doing what people do, well, I specialize in kids, or that I'm going to go do a lot of different things. And then when I get into private practice, I have a lot of different, areas to pull from, a lot of information. And that's been invaluable in my career.
Yeah. I'm fascinated in the prison inmate counseling. Can you tell me a little bit how that process works?
Well, I'll tell you how I got into it. It was my first job in substance abuse. I was counseling in an alcohol counseling center, and the local prison called and said, can you get a counselor to come up for half a day, see 3 or 4 inmates? And we want to start, a little bit of that. We need to augment our counseling program. So I went up and did that. And then the person who was doing the drug and alcohol counseling left and said, well, the full-time position is open. It was a huge step up in pay. He said, that looks good, but do I want to work in a prison? I'll tell you what, after the first, couple of days where, you can walk in and the bar's closed behind you and say, what in the world am I doing here? It's been one of the most rewarding ththings I've done in my life.
I bet.
And you want to talk about, when it comes to addiction, treating addicts, you want to talk about baptism by fire. I got a real, education regarding not only the drugs and the alcohol, but the way people dealt with them, what it did to them, the manipulations and all the games that are played. So when I left there, I was able to, see the addict coming, so to speak. When they came in my office now and they say, well, this, and they give me this and they give me that excuse, and I say, stop, don't even go there, because I'll tell you where you're going to go next. You're going to go here, and then they just deer in the headlights. It was a place where I saw addiction, but I saw people who have problems, and I learned how to just treat people like people with problems. And it removed the judging and the critiquing people. Everyone's the same. Everyone's got a problem. We deal with the problem. We love them. We love all the people.
When you encounter someone who is dealing with severe alcohol abuse, in your experience, what are the best words of advice that you could give to someone who is just starting in January and like, okay, now it's time to go. Now I'm done drinking.
Open it up. Don't keep it a secret. Don't think you can do it on your own. You build a network. If you are, let's say you're an alcoholic and you say, okay, fine, I'm there, I got to stop this. Or your family saying, come on, really, look at this, look at what we're losing here. Then you start opening it up. The family has to, needs help too. You want to make sure everybody's getting help. Get your family doctor involved. Get a counselor who understands addiction. Go to the meetings. Don't be the person who uses the cop out and says, man, when I go to AA and they start talking about alcohol, I actually want to drink because that's ridiculous. There's all those reasons. And be willing to be led. You did it your way and you blew it for so long. There are people who have gone through this, who know the way out of it. Go listen to them. Stay in contact. Don't just go to a meeting. Get your sponsor. Get your home group. Work your steps, take your commitments. Do all the things you need to do. If you're going to do this, make it a full-time job.
Yeah.
Just like you did your addiction.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I noticed when I was experimenting with trying to get sober, and I did the opposite of what you just recommended. I did not get a support group. I did try AA quite a few times actually, and I did get some really good stuff out of some meetings. But yeah, there were some meetings that definitely did not hit close to home, and I was seeking out support of people that were what I word it, just like me, I guess I would say, that I could relate to, and I wasn't getting so much of that at AA. So what would you recommend to others out there who find maybe AA is not working for them?
Well, before you make a decision that says AA doesn't work for me,
right,
I think what you have to do is get your sponsor, get one person who's going to take you through things and help you work through that.
Yeah.
To say AA doesn't work when you may have gone to 10 meetings, that's a drop in the bucket. Whole program to learn. There are those first 3 steps you want to really, entrench yourself in. You want to meet the people. You want to be willing to call them. When they say AA doesn't work for me, I'll say, do you have a sponsor? Almost always it's no.
Yeah.
I said, okay, when you go to a meeting, what do you do? Well, I just sit and I listen. I said, you didn't do anything.
Okay.
I said, it's whoever told you that it was a place to go and just sit. It's a 12-step program.
Mm-hmm.
You work the program. That's how you do it. And to make a decision. But see, when I hear that, and I always say this to my alcoholics, I always say, you guys all want everything real fast. You want to go there and in 2 or 3 weeks say, yeah, this is great. I think I got it. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be it's not a cure. It's a lifetime recovery program. You stay in it, and that's why it works.
Right.
And there are two kinds of alcoholics or addicts. There are those who just simply stop using, and then there are those that create a sober living style. There are a lot of dry drunks out there. A lot of people that don't
Oh
drink.
yeah. Yeah, I was. That's what I was. I was a dry
They're still
drunk.
angry people. They're still ready to pick up at any particular point. Life is not good because alcohol is not in it. It's one thing to stop. It's another thing now to allow your brain to retrain all those structures we talked about, get them healthy again, and learn what living without alcohol is all about.
Yeah.
You've done that for 10 years, 20 years. That's a lot of time where you were out of sync with the rest of the world. Getting back in and being able to live a norm that doesn't have highs in it.
Would you say that that's one of the biggest things that you get for feedback? It was when people come to you and they say, I just don't know how to live without alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a big one for me.
Absolutely. It's like, you put the drug in, whether it's alcohol or any other drug, now the euphoria starts and the brain lights up and when they show pictures of the brain on drugs, it's areas are lighting up in the brain. All of a sudden, that's not going to happen for you. And, on a scale of 1 to 10, that might have been a 9 or a 10. Now you're going to function at a 3. Can you be happy at a 3? See, the rest of us living that simple life say, absolutely. We find joy in all these little things. That's where we're going. So you can find the simple life, joy in it, and learn how to navigate through that, to embrace it, and to create within that structure.
Yeah. That's a big component, I feel like, of sobriety is all that time that I spend drinking. I could have, evolving. I could have started working on myself, all these things that I have regret for. And that was a big part of when I got sober. I noticed that, okay, now I need to fulfill whatever that hole that I was encompassing with the alcohol. Now I need to find it with something as equally as attractive, or because the feeling of alcohol was so strong and amazing for me, even though it was killing me, and it almost did kill me. But at the same end of it, I had to pursue interest. Like, that's why I started my channel, because that would kind of my own AA. It's my way of giving back after everything I went through and the people that I put in turmoil. But would you agree with that you have to kind of find something as equally as fulfilling? Is maybe not the right word, but
yeah, that's part of the creating the new life. But one of the hardest things for addicts to do is to get humble and say, I am going to listen to another person and let them guide me, and I'm not going to be the person that says, no, I'm doing it this way. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
If we can do that, a lot more people will go to meetings. A lot more people will take advice. People have a tendency to get sober, have the drug out of their bodies and out of their lives, and then go back to being alone.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
It doesn't work.
No.
We want to open it up. We want to open our lives up and be able to let other people in. Hear some other points of view, build new reference points, have new things that, be creative, have new things that make us feel good. We can't do that if we've decided that the only thing we're going to do is not drink.
Mm-hmm.
There's more to life than just not. Life is not one of those things where we say, well, I define it by what I don't do. And we define it by what we do. We want to stop doing the things that hurt us, but then we want to plug in. And then that means being grateful for what, for your sobriety and what's in it, and being humble enough to learn how to create through it.
I'm always fascinated with when people say, I had to hit a rock bottom to, change my life or my drinking habits or my drinking patterns, whatever. And I find that fascinating in the sense that everyone's rock bottom looks different. And sometimes they don't even have a rock bottom, or it might not look like a rock bottom to them. But in your throughout your career, have you noticed that when people come to you and they say that, you've been kind of amazed with, or maybe taken aback by what they say is their rock bottom?
Rock bottom for me, which where I would start this answer is when you get to the point that you realize nothing else is going to work and
Yeah.
you have now exhausted all your options.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that's working for you anymore. When they come in, then I'll tell them, okay, let's see what you had. Let's see what you lost. Let's see where you are right now. And we define what I always call their personal rock bottom. For a lot of people, they need to hit that before they can move on.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't understand the significance and the pain that the addiction has caused until then. But everybody's rock bottom has, in my mind, a lot of the same characteristics: the pain, the loneliness, the loss. And then it's personal stuff. What did you lose? How bad was the physical thing? Not everybody hits rock bottom is going to have a liver transplant.
Right.
However, they may have a living condition transplant where all of a sudden they lost the house and the spouse and the family. So there's always loss. There's always things that apply, and I often use that. I say, okay, well, this is what you lost. Now let's go back and retrace your steps and let's rebuild from that point. They're more susceptible because they have nothing to hold on to. I always say rock bottom's like falling off the boat and there's no lifesaver there. You're about as low as you're going to have. The sharks are over there. The ship is all the way up there. All you got is a lifesaver on a rope.
Yeah.
Are you willing to jump on? Well, that's all you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think of rock bottom as, the moment you decide to stop digging, right? I think I heard that one time and I like that one. When you are counseling these many different people throughout your career, have you noticed that people will not change unless they finally make that decision to change? Or is there a possibility that you can change without ever being forced to or whatever?
The easiest people to work with are the ones that embrace that and say,
Right.
I need this. But the reason isn't always that important. My spouse is going to leave if I don't stop drinking. Then they get there and I say, well, that's a great reason to get here. If you're going to stop just for that, we have a problem. But if you're going to use that as a stepping stone to look at every other part of your life and then realize, yeah, that person was right, it's fine. We can move from that point. I have a lot of people that have had success through that. But those people have to work harder because they haven't been convinced that it was really a problem. And that's that doing it for someone else kind of thing. You're really doing it for yourself. You just don't want to accept the pain that's going to come with what you really want to do. So now you have to, and a lot of times they're in the bargaining stage yet. They've come, okay, fine, I'm going to counseling. I told you I would. I'm going to some meetings. And then they'll say, well, I can have a couple. Well, you know where we are on that point.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too much of your time, Faust, but I was wondering for people out there who are listening, watching, throughout your career, I'm sure you've had many, many success stories. And I was just curious if you could just maybe bestow upon us some success stories or things like that can maybe inspire those who are feeling like they're the uninspirable.
I've had a lot of them. I remember one coming in, he was 16 when he started and worked his way up to a bottle and a half of, I think he was drinking vodka. And this went on until he was 31 years old and came to me. And he is now 58. We got him working on himself finally. He was 32. So I think he's, 26 years sober. And, and then they go, you don't see them anymore. And then they happen to be somewhere, and the hand goes up and remember me. And I'm trying to think of who it is. And yeah. And I say, I do. Yeah. You look healthy. So things are okay. I have been sober thanks to you for 26 years. Well, I just opened a few doors. You had to do the work.
Right.
You get those kinds of stories and they're out there and they're everywhere. And when you've been doing this for a long time, the one and there's several, but the ones that really stand out are the ones that go through that, work their way through, go into the rehab, accept the program, come out. And now I see them and I say, so that's great. What are you doing? I got my degree and guess what? My degree is in substance abuse counseling. Yeah. You look and you say, that's why we do this.
Yes, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So thank you again, Faust, for coming on. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. I got a lot out of this episode and I'm going to watch it back and and learn some more about the whole process of addiction and counseling and things like that. But before we jump off, where can people find you?
Well, the best place to find me would be my website. It's my name, www.faustruggiero.com. Everything about me, the books, everything I do is there, interviews, all that kind of stuff. And there's a link to contact me if anyone wants to do so. I do get back to people.
Beautiful. Well, everyone, please go check out Faust Ruggiero, his books, and reach out to him if you're interested. And thank you again, Faust, for coming on. I really appreciate your time. And everyone out there, happy 2025 and good luck on this journey. If you're just starting, you got this. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for everything in this next year upcoming. So thank you again. And be on the lookout for many, many more episodes coming soon. Take care.